um, as of now, I identify as what Hegel calls reason, namely the singular consciousness which knows to be the whole of reality. And so my purpose is to understand the whole of reality. And Hegel says that spirit shall recognize itself everywhere. I want to see if it's true, and I have started a series of videos about the philosophy of nature, and the purpose of the philosophy of nature, as the German idealists envisioned it, and even the ancient Greeks, was to bring forth the understanding and the appreciation of the sublime and the beautiful and the magical in nature. It's to romanticize nature, to have a fully living magical experience of nature, and it can only be achieved by a conceptual understanding of nature. So the motto of the philosophy of nature could be make nature great again, or make nature magical again. And the view of Hegel is that nature is the reflection of what he calls the eternal logical idea. So nature is a spatio-temporal world which is set by the mind. That's how Hegel envisioned it, and I want to see if it's true. And my idea is that one can only understand nature by presupposing that it is consciousness which creates nature, or which reflects nature, and not the other way around. But in this sense, I'm not a cosmological evolutionist, nor am I a Darwinist. But since my purpose is to understand everything, I must explain how cosmological evolution, the idea of the Big Bang and the creation and the development of the galaxies and the stars, and also the evolution of life in a Darwinian process, how they have come about in the representation that consciousness have. Because in my view, they are backward projection of consciousness, which retroactively projects in time and space its own development. I'm not sure that it's coherent, but that's the broad view I have. So I will comment passages from this book, Chaos and Harmony, by a French scientist of probably Asian origin. And the subtitle is the fabrication of the real, the manufacture of the real, or the creation of the real. It's not creation, it's fabrication. And my purpose is to see if the modern science of physics, and not only physics, but the natural sciences, can fit into the Hegelian worldview. And as I understand it, they do. So I will read some comments, and I will comment with my views of nature as of now, knowing that I am in a process of understanding what nature is. He says that at the end of the 20th century, we witness a shaking, a reshaping, a conceptual, I don't know what's the word, bouleversement. It's a reshaping, a restructuring of our way of conceiving the world, a new Weltanschauung, a new paradigm in science. The world is now understood not as a fragmented, mechanistic, deterministic universe, but as a holistic, indeterministic, and exuberant of creativity, with an outburst of creativity within the very structure of nature. That's the view of this scientist. He says that the Newtonian view presupposes that with a few basic fundamental physical laws, one could explain the totality of a system at a given instant. That's classical determinism, that if you know the fundamental laws of a given system, you can predict its future and understand its past, and from one element, one determination of the real, you can reconstruct the whole of reality. That's what the philosopher Fichte said in Die Bestimmung des Menschen, and that's what Spinoza, in a way, who was at the beginning of the modern scientific revolution, the system of Spinoza is rigorous determinism, and so is the system of Fichte in Die Bestimmung des Menschen. He said that traditional physics presuppose a set of regular, unchanging laws of nature above time on the one hand. So you have the fixed image, the set, stable realm of laws on the one hand, and on the other hand you have the constantly changing and constantly modifying world of phenomena. And Hegel, in his philosophy, says that it's a moment of the development of consciousness to envision the world as this dualistic world. On the one hand you have the constantly changing phenomena, which are the images of the laws of nature. On the other hand, through thinking activity, you can get to know what lies behind, what is inside, above the phenomena, and you can create through a mental process the stable image, which consists in the sets of determinate laws and forces of physics or chemistry. You have the set, fixed, stable, unchanging image through a cognitive process on the one hand, and on the other hand you have the constantly changing, constantly modifying, constantly swinging world of phenomena. And it is a necessary moment in the process of consciousness, but it is a profoundly dividing experience of reality, because you have two worlds. You have the world of phenomena and you have the world of laws, and it creates a feeling of alienation. And the purpose of a speculative view of nature, a philosophy of nature, not as to be differentiated from the strictly empirical consideration of physics, but a speculative philosophy of nature consists in, after having created this separation, this disunity, this differentiation between the world of phenomena and the realm of laws, is to, through a speculative activity, to reinstall, to recreate a feeling of substantial unity, which in the West, I think, we believe that the so-called primitive people who live in harmony with nature, the Australian Aborigines, the native Indians, the native tribes of South America in the Amazonia, or some peoples in Siberia, or they live in harmony with nature because they have not yet lost the substantial unity brought about by modern science. And there's a philosopher, I think it's Max Weber, or sociologist, I don't know, he said that Christianity brought about the death of Pan. Pan was the god of nature, and the Christian view, setting a god above nature, above time and space, it disenchanted the world. It nullified the experience of the divine and the numinous, the magical within nature, by placing the divine in a god above time and space. So the pagan world was full of gods, and the Christian world was, nature became a dead system. Even before the advent of modern science, nature had already been de-spiritualized, because all the divine and the spirit was placed within God. And the whole history of the Middle Ages and the struggle between the Christians and the pagan is in part a struggle between the view of the divine as being completely exterior to the world, so far above that the world of time, space, matter, and biology, chemistry, and physics, which at this time did not exist as conscious sciences, but the world of nature was considered inanimate or worthless in comparison to the infinite greatness of God. And the pagan view consisted in remaining attached to the magical and to the numinous and to the spirits of nature, and all the conflicts, religious conflicts, which shaped the history of Europe between the 5th century and the 15th century, can be considered as this dialectical interaction between these conflicting views, and all the persecutions of the mystics and the pagans and the witches, and they were all people who had an experience of the infinite within the finite, whereas the Christian church wanted the infinite to remain far above the finite. And we have these philosophical conflicts which are made manifest in the historical context, because according to Hegel, history is the theater of reason, and the conflicts of reason with itself are made manifest in history by the civil and geopolitical conflicts of reason with itself. And the Renaissance in Europe was a revival of pagan wisdom. They were, strictly speaking, they were still Christians, but it was a revival of pagan knowledge and a view of the unity of all things, the unity of man and nature, of man and God, the magical aspects of nature, with thinkers like Bruno and the Platonist school of Cambridge, I think, and I don't have the names, but they had some sort of a pantheistic view of nature, and the experience of the unity of man with the whole of being was made explicit in the Renaissance, and it was an outburst of creative ideas and alchemical, hermetic, pagan knowledge. So yeah, and the modern science has exhausted its dead and mechanistic view of things, and it is dialectically recovering this sense of magic and wonder of nature by the modern development of scientific thoughts. The Newtonian view of things is being self-negated, and we are recovering a sense of magic and wonder through the quantum physics and the modern theories of nature. So it's a Hegelian process in a way, and today many people are seeking spirituality in quantum physics because they believe, oh, science has brought spirituality back to has brought back spirituality to mankind. Now we have these quantum entanglements and these quantum coincidences and stuff like that. So there is a deep need to spiritualize nature, even in the most empirically, scientifically endeavors of man. And yeah, I continue. Then he quotes Hegel. That's quite comical. In the introduction, in the preface, he says, Hegel apparently said, there is nothing new in nature. So he quotes Hegel as being the representative of a deterministic, old-fashioned style of thinking about nature, whereas Hegel wanted to reintroduce the magical aspect of nature and the substantial unity of man with his environment, and the experience of the magic and the sublime and the beautiful and the living aspects of nature. So that's a misinterpretation of Hegel, but yeah. And then he says that he uses categories like the whole and the parts, and that the whole was just the sum, the addition of all the parts, whereas in Hegel's view, and already in Kant, the whole is an idea, which is a conceptual totality who is alive and whose idea precisely shapes all the determinations of the parts within it. So Hegel had a view of nature as being a holistic totality. And yeah, and then he talks about the relationship between cause and effect, and Hegel's logic proves that the idea to think that a cause is a cause and an effect is an effect is a false dichotomy. It's a false way of understanding nature, and that the effect is cause of itself and the cause is effect of itself, and they are in a dialectical interaction. So neither one nor the other is prior. They are mutually and reciprocally determining one another. And he says that this view, this deterministic Newtonian classical view, is dehumanizing, and it is being swept away by a new vision which is much more exalting and liberating. And I will stop there for now. I will continue because it's a very interesting book, and yeah.